Every American perennial garden looks tired by early August. That is the calendar, not the gardener. Peonies finished, iris finished, first flush of daylilies gone. 6 weeks of green foliage between now and first frost. No color to look at. The fix is direct sowing 13 flowers this week. Not perennials, annuals from a seed packet. Everyone germinates in July heat, blooms before frost, and floods the beds with the color the perennials lost. Number 1 is a $3 packet, 6 weeks to bloom, and a fresh bouquet in your kitchen every 3 days through October. Number 3 is the flower that scares off Japanese beetles for the last 5 weeks of the season. And number 13 is what every gardener over 60 grew as a child, forgot for 40 years, and needs to plant again this July. 13 flowers sown this week, blooming through October. Number 13, Bachelor button, also called cornflower, the blue annual every American gardener over 60 remembers from a grandmother's flower bed, forgotten for 4 decades. The pollinator crisis brought it back to every seed catalog, worth its salt. Why July? Germinates in 5 to 7 days in warm soil, reaches bloom in about 60 days, and unlike most spring-sown annuals, it does not mind late summer heat once established. Sow mid-July, first flowers open mid-September, bloom through first mild frost. How to sow? Broadcast the seed on prepared soil. Rake in lightly to cover about 1/4 inch. Thin seedlings to 8 inches apart once they have 4 true leaves. Direct sow only. Bachelor button does not transplant well. Cultivars to look for. Blue Boy is the classic true blue. Black Ball is a deep maroon that reads almost purple in evening light. Polka Dot Mix gives a range of blues, whites, and pinks from a single packet. One zone note. Bachelor button prefers cool weather and struggles when the temperature runs above 90 degrees for long stretches. In zones 7 and warmer, where late July still hits triple digits regularly. Sow in the last week of July for germination, timed to the cooling weeks of August. In zones 4, 5, and 6, sow now. My grandmother grew Bachelor button in a strip along the back of her Ohio vegetable garden every summer from about 1968 through the mid-70s. She saved seed from the darkest blue plants every fall. That saved seed lineage is why the strain in my own trial garden today has such reliable deep color. Genetics matter. Buy from a real seed house, not a mass market pouch at the chain checkout. Number 12. Sweet alyssum, the low-growing white or pale purple carpet that forms a fragrant edge around any bed within 40 days. One of the fastest bloomers on this list. Warm July soil gives germination in 4 to 6 days and first bloom in about 6 weeks, carpet from mid-August through first hard frost. How to sow? Surface sow only. Alyssum needs light to germinate. Do not cover the seed. Press gently into the surface and mist twice a day until seedlings emerge. Tough once established, tolerates poor soil, drought, and neglect. Cultivars. Carpet of Snow is the classic pure white. Rosie O'Day produces soft pink. Snow Princess is a sterile hybrid that blooms harder and longer than any seed strain because it does not divert energy to setting seed. Plant it near a porch or a garden path. Walk past at 7 in the evening in September, and the honey scent stops you where you stand. One trick in peak July heat. If the plants look leggy, shear the entire planting back by half with hedge shears. They recover in 2 to 3 weeks and re-bloom harder than the first flush. Nobody thinks to shear an annual. That is exactly why the beds that get sheared look better in October. Number 11. Strawflower, also called everlasting daisy. The heat-loving Australian annual with crisp, papery flower heads in yellow, orange, pink, red, or white that hold their color right up until frost. Loves heat and long summer days. Sown in warm July soil, seed germinates in about 10 days and first flowers open in about 75 days. Peak bloom mid-September through first hard frost. How to sow? Surface, sow only. Strawflower seed needs light. Do not cover it. Press gently onto the soil and mist twice a day until seedlings emerge, thin to 12 inches. Cultivars. Tall Mix is the traditional 4-foot cut flower strain in a full range of colors. Sunday's Blaze is the compact bedding series at 15 inches. Silvery Rose is the specialty color, a soft, dusty pink that reads as almost silver in evening light. Cut the flowers just before they fully open. Tie small bundles upside down in a dry shed for 2 weeks. Winter arrangements from your own garden. The chain does not stock Strawflower because it does not photograph well in a plastic 6-pack. That is exactly why the neighbor will notice yours. Number 10. Nasturtium, the trailing annual with round green leaves and peppery orange, red, or yellow flowers that most gardeners tried once from a spring packet and gave up on when the plant sulked in cool, wet April soil. Nasturtium is a summer flower, not a spring flower. Cool, wet spring soil rots the seed before it germinates. Warm, dry July soil gives you a germination rate closer to 90% instead of the 40% most spring gardeners get. First flowers open in about 6 weeks. How to sow. Nick the hard seed coat with a fingernail file or soak the seeds in warm water for 12 to 24 hours before planting. Unsoaked nasturtium seed germinates unpredictably and slowly. Soaked or nicked seed germinates in about a week. Sow 1 inch deep, 6 to 8 inches apart in the poorest soil you have. Rich soil produces enormous foliage and no flowers. Never fertilize nasturtium. Poor soil produces the trade you want, small, tidy plants with heavy bloom, cultivars. Empress of India is crimson red with dark blue-green foliage. Whirlybird Mix has upward-facing flowers. Alaska has variegated cream and green foliage that reads well before the flowers open. The flowers are edible, peppery, like a mild watercress. My grandkids do not eat vegetables. They will eat a nasturtium flower off the stem if you tell them it is peppery. Number 9. Calendula, also called pot marigold. Not the same plant as the true marigold at number 3, and confused with it by every American gardener for 2 centuries running. Calendula is a cool season annual. That is why it belongs on a July sowing list. Sown now, it germinates in about 10 days, grows through the summer heat, and hits peak bloom exactly when the perennial bed runs out of color, mid-September through first hard frost. Why July? Calendula bloom quality actually improves as the temperature drops. The flowers get larger, the color deeper, the petal count higher through cool fall nights. A plant that looked ordinary in mid-August looks extraordinary by the first week of October. How to sow. Sow 1/4 inch deep, 6 inches apart in decent garden soil. This is one of the few flowers on this list where you do want to bury the seed. Calendula actually needs darkness to germinate. Cover it well. Calendula tolerates poor soil, but performs better in beds that have been amended with a couple of inches of compost. Water at soil level and keep the surface moist for the first 2 weeks. One zone note. Calendula shuts down in temperatures above 85 degrees. If you are gardening in zone 7 and warmer, where mid-July into August still hits the 90s regularly, sow calendula in the last week of July or first week of August to time germination for cooler days ahead. In zones 4, 5, and 6, sow now. Cultivars. Pacific Beauty is the tall, reliable mix with strong stems for cutting. Resina is the medicinal cultivar with the highest concentration of the oils used in traditional skin salves. Indian Prince is deep orange with darker centers, the most photogenic of the mixes. My grandmother made calendula ointment from her own dried petals every fall for cuts and scrapes. The recipe was on an index card in her kitchen for 40 years. I still have the card. Number 8. Gomphrena, also called globe amaranth. The heat-loving annual with small button-shaped flowers in magenta, purple, white, or coral that most gardeners have never grown because the chain does not stock it in spring flats. One of the most heat-tolerant annuals in the trade, it thrives in 90-degree afternoon heat. Sown in July, seed germinates in 10 to 14 days and blooms continuously mid-September through first hard frost. How to sow. Soak seeds in warm water 24 to 48 hours before planting. Unsoaked seed germinates unpredictably. Even with soaking, germination rate is low. Sow generously, 1/8 inch deep, 12 inches apart. Soil temperature above 75 degrees for reliable germination. Cultivars. Fireworks is the coral pink version that grows to 3 feet and looks like a small mimosa tree covered in tufts. Strawberry Fields is the deep magenta cut flower strain. QS Purple is the shortest, at about 18 inches, and the reliable pick for the front of a mixed border. Gomphrena flower heads dry on the plant and hold color into November. Cut and tie in bundles for winter arrangements. Pair with Strawflower at number 11 for a full dried bouquet. Number 7. Tithonia, also called Mexican sunflower, the tall tropical annual most American gardeners have never seen because the seed packets sit in a corner of the chain seed rack and never move. Native to central Mexico, Tithonia grows fast in heat, reaches 4 to 6 feet tall in 8 weeks from seed, and blooms with 3-inch bright orange flowers, the single most powerful butterfly magnet you can plant in an American garden. How to sow? Direct sow 1/4 inch deep, 18 to 24 inches apart. Water in and keep the surface moist for the first 10 days. Drought tolerant once established. Cultivars. Torch is the traditional 4 to 6 foot cultivar with the classic bright orange flowers. Fiesta del Sol is a shorter version at about 30 inches for smaller beds. Yellow Torch is the golden yellow variant if you want the same effect in a different color palette. The butterfly draw is what makes Tithonia worth the space. Somewhere around 2003, could have been 2004, I planted a single row of torch along the back of my Ohio trial garden. The number of monarchs, swallowtails, and painted ladies working that row on a September afternoon was the highest concentration of butterflies I have ever counted in one spot in 40 years of trial gardening. 24 butterflies at once on a single row of plants. That is what Tithonia does. 2 insider notes the seed packet will not tell you. First, never enrich the soil. Rich soil gives you 7-foot plants that flop in the first September thunderstorm. Second, pinch the center stem at about a foot tall. That single pinch gives you a bushier plant that never needs staking. Both together are the difference between Tithonia and a mess of broken stems by October. Quick word before number 6. There is more practical perennial garden design than fits in any one video. I gathered 40 years of it into a book at henrysgardensecrets.com. The book is the long version. I will not bring it up again. Now to number 6. Number 6, Balsam, also called garden balsam, the old-fashioned annual with camellia-shaped flowers tucked tight against a straight leafy stem. Every gardener over 60 remembers balsam from a grandmother's front bed and has not seen it in a nursery flat since about 1985. Why July? Warm season annual that specifically prefers July heat. Direct sown in warm soil. Seed germinates in 7 to 10 days, and first flowers open in about 65 days, with full bloom from mid-September through first frost. How to sow? 1/4 inch deep, 12 inches apart, in a bed with decent drainage. Balsam rots in cool, wet soil, and warm July soil solves it. Keep the seedbed moist for the first 10 days. Cultivars. Camellia-flowered mix is the traditional double-flowered strain in pink, white, red, and violet. Tom Thumb mix is the compact 15-inch version for the front of a bed. Peppermint stick has the classic bicolor red and white striping that reads instantly as heirloom. My grandmother grew balsam along the shady side of her front porch every summer from about 1965 through the mid-70s. The plants grew up tight against the porch, the flowers tucked in among the leaves like small hidden roses. I have not seen a single balsam sold as a nursery transplant in 40 years. The only way to grow it now is from a seed packet, and that is exactly the reason to grow it. Nobody else on your street will have this in their bed. Tap subscribe if you have not already. The results of every trial in my beds land here first before any garden magazine catches up. New notes every couple of days. Number 5, sunflower, the quick-blooming varieties. Every American gardener knows the sunflower. What most do not know is that the seed catalogs quietly bred a whole category of quick-blooming sunflowers over the last 30 years, cultivars that go from packet to full flower in 50 to 60 days instead of the traditional 90. Those quick cultivars are the ones you sow in July for a fall accent. Sunflowers grow fast in warm soil. Sown in mid-July, the quick cultivars germinate in 7 days, grow rapidly, and hit full bloom in the first week of September in most American zones. The traditional mammoth types are too slow. By the time they would bloom, the first frost has already hit. How to sow. 1 inch deep, 12 to 18 inches apart, depending on cultivar. Water in, keep moist for the first 10 days. Once established, sunflowers are drought tolerant. Do not fertilize. Extra nitrogen produces tall stems and small flowers instead of the opposite. One cultivar note: the seed rack will not clarify. The traditional sunflowers are day-length sensitive, meaning they trigger bloom based on shortening daylight. A late July sowing of a day-length sensitive variety may fail to bloom in time if the plant does not receive its trigger. The Pro-Cut series, along with Firecracker and the Sunspot dwarfs, are day neutral. They bloom on a fixed number of days from sowing regardless of daylight. For a July sowing, day neutral is what you want. Read the seed packet. Cultivars. Sunspot is the 2-foot dwarf, ideal for the front of a bed. Elf is the 16-inch miniature, tight enough for a container. Firecracker is the 50-day quick bloomer with the deep red-orange petals. Pro-Cut Orange is the 55-day cut flower single stem. Autumn Beauty Mix is the classic branching type with bicolor petals in yellow, red, and mahogany. One planting note: young sunflower buds follow the sun through the day, but the mature open flower fixes east and holds. Plant your row facing the kitchen window. Every September sunrise, you get the same view. Number 4, Celosia, also called coxcomb, the tropical annual with dramatic feathery plumes or coral-shaped crested heads in red, orange, pink, or yellow. Warm season annual that specifically resents cool, wet spring soil. Sown in July heat, seed germinates in 6 to 10 days, and first bloom hits at about 8 weeks. Peak bloom mid-September through first hard frost, holding color right until temperatures drop below 30. How to sow. 1/8 inch deep. Warm soil is non-negotiable. Celosia will not germinate below 70 degrees. Thin seedlings to 8 to 12 inches, depending on cultivar. Cultivars. Kramer's Amazon is the cut flower strain with tall dramatic plumes. Fresh Look is the compact bedding series with dense feathery flower heads. Cristata Rose is the traditional coxcomb type with the coral brain shape that reads immediately in any bed. The color intensity of a fresh Celosia head in evening light is what your dinner guests will comment on in September. If this video is already the piece of practical late summer advice nobody else has told you this year, tap like. That is how the algorithm hands the video to the neighbor who is about to give up on her beds and buy replacements at the chain in September. One tap, 40 years of trial garden work into her feed. That is the trade. The last 3 are the workhorses. The 3 flowers I would not attempt to have a summer bed without. Number 3, Marigold, the true French marigold. The workhorse annual every American gardener has grown at least once, and the plant that saves the last 5 weeks of your perennial bed if you sow directly this week. Fastest blooming annual in the trade. Direct sown in mid-July, seed germinates in 5 to 7 days. First flowers in about 45 days. Full bloom early September through first hard frost. How to sow. 1/4 inch deep, 6 to 8 inches apart for compact French cultivars. 10 to 12 inches for African types. Water in, keep moist for the first week. Bulletproof once established. Cultivars. Naughty Marietta is the yellow with the mahogany blotch, the exact one I trialed 40 different marigolds against in 1985 and could not beat. Durango Mix is the modern compact bedding series in 6 colors. Tashkent is the taller cut flower marigold with the citrus orange color. The pest deterrent claim. Marigold roots release a compound called alpha-terthionyl that is toxic to root knot nematodes and mildly repellent to Japanese beetles. This is not folklore. It has been documented in agricultural research since the 1960s. Interplant marigolds in a bed of hostas, tomatoes, or roses, and the Japanese beetle pressure drops by about 1/3 to half during the last 5 weeks of the season. Not zero, reduced. That is the trade. Number 2, Cosmos, the airy annual with daisy-like flowers on tall, wiry stems that reads as a cloud of pink, white, or magenta in the back of any bed. Why July? loves heat, tolerates drought, blooms continuously for 8 to 10 weeks. Sown in July, seed germinates in about 7 days and first flowers open in about 60 days. Peak bloom mid-September through first frost. How to sow: 1/4 inch deep, 6 inches apart. Critical rule: do not fertilize cosmos. Rich soil produces enormous plants with almost no flowers. Poor soil gives you tidy plants with continuous bloom. Cultivars: Sensation Mix is the classic 3 to 4 foot cut flower type in pink, white, and magenta. Double Click is the double-flowered series that reads almost like a small dahlia from 10 feet away. Xanthos is the pale butter yellow variant, the only yellow in the entire Cosmos bipinnatus line, and worth planting for the surprise alone. I will be honest, I went back and forth on whether Zinnia or Cosmos deserved number 1 this year. Both bloom to frost. Both are July sow standards. Cosmos sits at number 2 because Zinnia is faster to bloom by about 10 days. And in a July sow, that 10 days makes the difference between a September bed and a September and October bed. Cosmos also, in my 40 years of trial gardening, blows over in the first September thunderstorm more often than Zinnia does. Wind matters at the back of a bed. Zinnia handles it. Cosmos does not, always. Number 1, Zinnia, the queen of the summer cutting garden, the fastest blooming, hardest working, most reliable annual on this list. The one plant to sow this weekend if you are only going to sow one thing. Why July? Loves heat, tolerates drought, blooms in about 6 weeks from seed, faster than any other cut flower annual. Sown mid-July, first bloom last week of August, full bloom mid-September through first hard frost. How to sow: 1/4 inch deep, 6 to 12 inches apart. Keep the seedbed moist for the first 10 days. Do not overhead water. Zinnia gets powdery mildew if foliage stays wet. Water at soil level. Cultivars: Benary's Giant is the tall cut flower series in a full range of colors, 4 to 5 feet tall. State Fair is the classic garden mix, still reliable. Zahara is the disease-resistant compact series bred for American heat and humidity, the pick for zones 7 and warmer, where powdery mildew is a summer certainty. The Trial Garden Data. Mount Cuba Center in Delaware trialed dozens of Zinnia cultivars against each other over multiple summers in the 20-teens. The top performers for continuous bloom, disease resistance, and pollinator visits were all in the Benary's Giant and Zahara lines. That is where I would spend the seed budget, not on the mass market pouch at the chain checkout. 2 insider tips that separate a great Zinnia bed from an average one. First, pinch the growing tip out of each plant when it reaches 8 to 12 inches tall, right above a set of 4 leaves. That single pinch produces 5 to 10 times more stems and blooms than an unpinched plant. Second, succession sow. Put down another round of Zinnia seed every 2 to 3 weeks through mid-July. The waves of new plants extend the peak bloom right through the first hard frost. Zinnia will cost you $3 for a packet. It will produce enough flowers to cut a bouquet for your kitchen every 3 days from late August through the first hard frost. It will feed the last butterflies and hummingbirds of the season. And it will do all of that from seed sown this weekend. 13 flowers sown this week, blooming through October, and for the everlasting ones through winter as dried arrangements. The perennial bed runs out of color by early August. That is the calendar. The fix is a packet of Zinnia seed, 20 minutes of prepared soil, and a Saturday morning of watering until the first true leaves come up. Drop a comment with the numbers of the flowers you are sowing this weekend and the U.S. state you are gardening in. I read every one.